Welcome back. The Krugersdorp Gang Rape victims will have to wait even longer to see justice. The 14 suspects initially charged will no longer face charges after DNA results failed to link them to the crime. The National Prosecuting Authority has dropped all charges. One community activist has accused the police of incompetence. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu is on that story. He joins me now for an update. Manqoba, surely this must be incredibly embarrassing for the police. What did the minister have to say after such incredibly public arrests back in July?
Well, only the minister saying that they're not at all disappointed by what has happened here. He says, of course, that investigations are still continuing, and that's the reason why he says they're not disappointed. He says they believe that they're still going to crack this case. They're going to find the people that are responsible for this. But of course, it is egg on the face of police, given that they had come out only earlier on, just months ago, saying that they were quite adamant that they have the right people behind bars. In fact, they said that, they've even narrowed those suspects to 14. You recall that initially there were 80 of them that were arrested, but they ended up being 14 of them. And the police minister saying that, of course, they had relied on these victims as the police during that identity parade to point out these suspects, and that's where they then based their case on. So they were quite hopeful that these were the right suspects that they had because of those identification. We do know that out of the 8 suspects, only 3 of those suspects managed to identify or undergo that particular process. The other 5 were quite hesitant. They were not sure whether these were the suspects, so they could not be relied on in terms of that identity parade. But subsequent to that, we know there were DNA tests that were also conducted by the police. We know there were 2 rounds of DNA that were done. And the minister saying that they just wanted to ensure that they have the right people behind bars. But where the problem came was when there was a second verification. And this is when there was a consultation with the victims after the DNA tests have come back showing that these were not the suspects. None of them were linked to this case. And he says that this is when it became evident that they could not proceed with this particular case. But he says that they're not embarrassed. They are going to continue. And he says that they're going to find those who are behind this. Take a listen to what he had to say.
The people that were survivors identified those 14 people. The arrest was based exactly on that. But because it's a sexual offense and the rape, we had to go an extra mile as usually do. We went for the DNA. We wanted to be thorough to such an extent that half of those people, the second DNA was taken. All that DNA has come back negative. But let me say, the way we were thorough, we created a special team in the laboratories to deal with the issues of Krugersdorp. 300 DNA tests have been taken to be far beyond these 14 people that have been arrested.
Manqoba, disturbing to me that essentially what Minister Bekele is saying is that, well, they relied on the victim identification and, because the victims identify the wrong people, it's not the police's fault. However, I can only put myself in the shoes of these women who must have been incredibly traumatized. And now to be blamed, essentially, for identifying the wrong people. What did the community members say? Because they talked to you about this issue, didn't they?
Well, the community members, I can tell you that they're quite disappointed. In fact, they're saying that they're not even shocked that, the police had got it wrong. And they're saying that the reason for this is because when those arrests were being done, they saw, people that were not even, illegal minors being arrested by police, people that were working in gardens, people that were working in some of the homes being apprehended by police and being arrested. So they're saying that it comes as no surprise for them as a community. But they're saying that they're quite disappointed at the police because they had hoped that, out of this there will be some sort of finality, some sort of closure on this particular matter. But they're saying that even in the community itself, it seems as if they've gone back to square one in terms of the fight against crime. Because you recall only that when all of this started, community members had taken issues into their own hands, accusing police of not servicing the community. We know there were also, police that were sent there just weeks after this had happened. But those those police have gone in that community now, and the community members saying that the fact that these 14 suspects have still not been arrested, that is something that is worrying them. They fear for their own safety. But I want you to take a listen just to what some of them had to say earlier on.
I don't know if it's an ego or what, that the police have failed. Why can't they deploy? It's an issue of the ego that they can't deploy soldiers because they failed. So we're still scared. Rapes are still happening. You can't see people after 5 o'clock. So the help that we needed from our state, the state is failing us. These people are still coming in numbers.
I think fear is creeping in. However, we are a community that is refusing to live in fear, irrespective of our circumstances. With the cases being dropped, it actually just brings a realization that what's needed is to agitate the community and to mobilize themselves so that they can organize themselves in fighting back.
From the time that the rapes happened up to now, nothing has changed. Nothing has happened. The Zamazamas are back. They're just not wearing blankets anymore, and balaclavas. But they around, they working. The police is not getting into our community anymore.
Manqoba, certainly a very desperate situation for this community, knowing that the people who committed this horrific crime are still out there among them.
And many of the people saying that they're still quite traumatized. I mean, in fact, we spoke to some of the residents, the women there, who say that they're even scared to send their children to the shops or for their children to even be playing outside. And it just tells you that this is really a community that is under siege, a community that is really hoping for some sort of intervention. And as they say, right now, the Zamazamas are back in that community, and they even told us, Andy, that there's even a list now that, they've seen that these Zamazamas have threatening, of course, those that were active, the community leaders, that they are going to, attack them. And some of the people have already fled that area. So it's really a desperate situation for that community that's crying out for help.
Thank you so much for bringing us that report. That was eNCA's Manqoba Mchunu.